What's up everybody, Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. Huge thanks to Subaru for providing me here with the refreshed version of the Crosstrek to review for you guys today. So about the 2021 Crosstrek, well, the big news is that you have the option to get this 2.5 liter engine now, which is larger than the 2.0 you used to be able to get, and you get an extra 30 horsepower with it, and I'll go into more details in the driving part. But so that's the big news here, but there are also some nice visual changes here for 2021 to freshen up the look of the Crosstrek. So first off, right up front, you can see that you have a restyled front bumper there. You have a new grille, which I think is pretty attractive, gives a little bit more of a rugged look than the previous grille. And you also have some additional body cladding there around that front fog light area, and that's actually designed to give more front protection for those fog lights in the front bumper. And I think overall it just gives the Crosstrek a more rugged look overall. Now unfortunately you still do have standard halogen headlamps. I wish they would have upgraded to all LEDs like some other companies have done here recently, but unfortunately this is a sport trim, so this doesn't get the LED headlights. You can get LED headlights and LED fog lights in the top limited trim of the Crosstrek, but that is the only trim that gets it. So otherwise, you know, you're stuck with the halogen headlamps. But moving past that, coming down to the sides here, you'll see some extra body cladding around the wheel arches here as well. That again gives it more of a rugged look here for 2021. There's also some new wheels. So these are the wheels you get here on the Sport. There's also a different design for the Limited now, and those are 18-inch wheels. These are 17 inches. And the Sport trim, they deliberately left the 17s on, so you have a little bit of a better ride quality with the thicker sidewalls, and that gives you slightly better off-road capability than what you get with the lower profile tires on the Limited version. So the Sport's going to be the more rugged version in that regard, but still gives you that big engine. And the Sport trim, by the way, is all new here for 2021, and so it slots above the Premium but below the Limited, so that's kind of where this is positioned at now. You also get these matte gray mirror caps here on the Sport trim as well, which gives a little bit of a darker look. You also have the blacked out badge, as you can see on the back. That is one thing that's new here with the Sport trim for 2021. But otherwise, you know, I love, you know, having the real roof racks. They're very pronounced here and give it a rugged look. And then going out back there isn't any large changes here to the styling or anything like that. But overall, I don't think they really needed to mess with much here with the Crosstrek, because it looked really good. They were selling really well. People loved the way that it looked and everything. And so just minor little changes here just to freshen it up, but overall still the same great look as all the other Crosstreks in the past. Right, so for the interior of the 2021 Crosstrek, well, across all Crosstrek models, it's basically the same as before. You know, there's not really any big changes, but the Sport trim here does get a lot of cool little unique touches. So the first thing you'll notice here is these StarTech seats. And so this is the vegan leather-like material that Subaru came up with here. And they're really cool. So actually 25% of the backing material is recycled. And also the floor mats are actually made out of recycled materials as well, so that's very cool. But these seats, they're actually water repellent too, this StarTech, and they're super soft and comfortable. It's really impressive just how soft they are, and they're more durable than real leather as well. And so overall, they're just really great seats. Now there isn't any adjustable lumbar or anything, and here in the Sport model, you still don't have any power adjustments or anything, but that's okay. You know, you know, they're still pretty comfortable. I haven't had any issues with not having lumbar support here, and the bolstering's all pretty good and everything. So overall, I really like these seats, but if you do want real leather, you can get that in the Limited model still. Next, there's the steering wheel here in the Crosstrek. So this is where you're going to see these like greenish yellowy accents everywhere in here. It begins on the steering wheel with this big trim piece. That is unique to this Sport trim. You also will see that reflected on the gauges and all the stitching on the dashboard and stuff. But I believe that is only here for the Sport trim. So if you don't love this color, it's an interesting color. I don't think I'm a huge fan of it personally. And if you're not, then again, other versions of the Crosstrek will still have orange stitching. But anyway, it's a great steering wheel though, a great 9-3 grip, nice 10-2 notches. You do have a lot of buttons on the steering wheel. I did notice, you know, it's a lot to take in here on the steering wheel. Obviously, once you buy one of these and live with it, you'll get used to where all the buttons are at and stuff. But on the right, you have all your safety stuff and all your infotainment stuff on the left-hand side. But then you also have these little extra rocker switches here on the left. That'll change what's displayed in your gauge cluster. You also have drive drive mode selectors here on the right side, which seems a little bit overkill for a Crosstrek, but that's right there in the steering wheel in case you want that at quick reach. You also have paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel, which is a nice touch, and you know, helps if you do want to have a little bit of a sportier driving experience here in the Crosstrek. Moving on to the gauges here in the Crosstrek. So the sport trim here does get the larger color middle display there, and so, but on premium and base trims, you know, that is going to be a simpler screen and smaller, but it is the larger screen here, and this is also the larger screen you're going to get in the Limited as well. And the gauges are, you know, your basic analog gauges, nothing to write home about there. In the middle though, you know, you have your basic trip information stuff. Not a whole lot displayed there in that middle screen. It would be nice to show you more like your audio information, all that type of stuff, but you can't really show any of that in there. But you do have an auxiliary screen here when you're coming over to the middle of the dashboard, right up top, and that'll show you your climate control settings, also the time, temperature, a couple of things in there, and kind of nice to have all that right at a quick glance right up top there in your line of view as you're driving. And so I really like that. It's not quite as cool as what you get in like the WRX or something where that's a larger screen. Even the Forester has a larger screen there and can show you some more stuff. This one's a little simpler, but nice to have that nonetheless. Coming down, you also have Subaru's 8-inch Starlink infotainment system here. And I really like this screen. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and just, it's nice and simple. You know, changing radio stations is as simple as turning the tune knob or using the on-screen controls. But it all is very quick and snappy. I haven't had any issues with any of this and how it works. You also have a CD drive right beneath that. And so I really like this screen. It doesn't have any of the lag that I've noticed in the large new screen you have in the Outback and the Legacy and stuff. I kind of like this smaller screen better. Now this is the upgraded screen. You will go down to a 6.5-inch screen in the lower versions of the Crosstrek, but that also, those still do have the smartphone integration even with that smaller screen, so that's great. And then volume and tune knobs right beneath there, and a couple of other button shortcuts. Then you come down to your climate controls, which are, you know, simple, not dual zone by the way here in the Sport, but just nice to have the auto climate control nonetheless. A couple other things here. So with the Sport trim, it does give you the proximity key as well as push button start, which is something that, you know, the premium doesn't get, but you do get in the higher trims. So it is nice to kind of bring some of those limited features down here to the Sport without having to jump up to that higher price tag of the Limited version. And so other unique Limited things, like I said, you get this stitching here, which by the way, by your knee area, it's nice and padded right beneath that starter button, but then like where my knee actually rests is still hard plastic. So I wish they would have put the padding all the way down here. Just a minor complaint, but on long road trips when you're using cruise control and stuff, maybe you're going to be resting your knee there. Not super comfortable. I do wish that was padded all the way down. But again, this is, you know, a price conscious vehicle, so I realize they can't do too much. But other things here, you do have some gunmetal trim as far as the look of this dark gray plastic, and you also have this faux carbon fiber here on the Sport, which is a nice other little addition that's interesting. And this perforated StarTech here on the door panels is kind of cool. And so I think, you know, they kind of dressed up this interior. It certainly feels a little more lively than a lot of the competitors. Moving on to storage space here though in the Crosstrek, it is pretty good. So in the doors here you have a pretty large pocket. You can fit a bottle and a couple other little things. As you can see here, some wipes fit there very nicely. Beneath the climate controls you have 2 USB jacks, an auxiliary jack, and a power outlet, and this rubberized area here, which is nice to have, but it's not super large. And like my iPhone 11 Pro won't fit long ways, at least not all the way in. If I put it sideways though, you can see it does fit there. And then you have your 2 cup holders, which are a decent size, and then you have the center armrest, which is really nice and softly padded, which is honestly, a lot of the competitors do not have an armrest that feels this nice. All the elbow points are so plush, and Subaru does a really good job of making things feel nice and plush for the most part on their interiors. And that is one thing you will notice sitting down in this versus the competitors. It's a lot more plush between the seats, the elbow points, everything just feels a little bit more comfortable, and I really like that because I like nice soft, you know, padding and stuff. And anyway, you open up this armrest and you'll see a pretty deep cubby in there, and you also will see 2 more USB jacks and another power outlet, which is kind of unheard of. Usually whenever you have them out here in the front, that's about all you get in most of the competitors. So to have these are great. So I'm really happy they have those, and the reason why they have those there, I'm not sure, because when you go to the back seat, one of the disappointments with the back seat is there are no air vents and there are no USB jacks back there. So maybe you could run a cord here from the center armrest to the backseat passengers so they can use these USB jacks, but I'm not sure why you need 4 up front and then have 0 in the back. It'd be nice to see those USB jacks move to the back seat, and that's what most of the competitors offer, is at least one USB jack in the back there. And so interesting they're in the center armrest here, but you know, I guess it's nice to have the extra USB jacks nonetheless. But anyway, moving on to that back seat, I'm just blown away by the fact that it's so roomy back here. So compared to most other subcompact crossovers, this is a good bit roomier. So I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself, I have about 4 inches of legroom to spare, which truly is unheard of. You know, like the Mazda CX-30, which does have a luxurious interior, that is a lot tighter on the back seat. You have maybe 1 inch of legroom. I mean, this is pretty substantially larger, and even some of the brand new competitors like the Chevy Trailblazer, which prides itself on being a little bit bigger and having a big back seat, this is even more room than you get in that. I mean, they really knocked out of the park with back seat space here in the Crosstrek. And then you also have bottle holders in those doors, so nice to have that. But there's also no fold down center armrest, which most of the competitors also offer. And so you only have those bottle holders as far as holding drinks. There aren't any actual cup holders in the back seat, which is kind of crazy that they don't, again, give you that here. And that is something that most of the competitors do have. If not as standard, it's at least on the mid-grade and upper level trims. And so for this to have no cup holders, no USB jacks, no power outlets, or no air vents back there is a little bit of a sore exclusion. The air vents are kind of rare in this segment in the back seat, but you know, the USB jacks and cup holders should be, you know, that's pretty par for the course. So the fact this doesn't have those is the only downfall to that back seat, because otherwise, like I said, as far as space goes, I think this is top of the class as far as roominess. It really is great. Trunk space here in the Crosstrek is also really good. So it's a nice wide opening. That's something that is kind of unique, because a lot of the other competitors have a little bit of a more narrow opening. But you know, it's a fairly deep space for this type of vehicle. It's not going to be the largest in this segment, I don't think. I think there are some that do offer you a little bit more space back there in this segment. But it is nice and wide, and you know, should be very usable. Beneath the floor, you don't have any extra bins, but you do see a spare tire back there, so that's nice to have. And one cool addition here for 2021 is that you have an LED light in the tailgate there, in the lift gate. So they said that was, you know, something that was a must requested feature from their buyers who, you know, I guess whenever you're camping or hiking or whatever, if it's dark, you know, you have a little bit of a light there in that rear hatch, but it wasn't really great. So now you have an actual light above you that can shine down, and that's just a really cool little feature. They really thought a lot about their customers and how they actually use the Crosstrek. And so, you know, thoughtful little additions like that, you know, it really shows that they put a lot of thought into how they designed this interior. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Crosstrek here with the keyless access has the nice new Subaru key that they use in all the models now. And I really like this key because it's a little bit on the shorter side. It's nice and small, has a nice weight to it though. It's a little thick, but not too bad, and fits in your pocket nicely. So I just really like it. But of course, it's keyless access. Like I said, keyless entry and push button start here in the Sport and Limited. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2021 Crosstrek 2.5. So the first thing that I think I noticed is the excellent visibility. Subaru always knocks visibility out of the park, and I think honestly it's the best visibility in the segment by a pretty good margin. I mean, you have a massive windshield, nice thin A-pillars. They say they use a lot of high-strength steel in the roof here, and that's why they're able to have a nice thin A-pillar. You have a massive window here at the mirror. The door mirror is actually on the door, not on the A-pillar there, so you have, you know, totally unobstructed view, which I love. And then, you know, view out of the sides is great. View out of the back is also really good, and even you know, has a little bit of a larger glass window there in the back than even some of the other competitors. And so, you know, looking out of this thing is just really, really great. You also have a moonroof as an option you can get to give you even more glass, but overall it gives you a very airy feeling. So when you're exploring your surroundings or just doing your daily commute, you're going to have, you know, just a really nice view out of all the windows, and you know, so it'll give you a very airy feel in here, and kind of just help you to experience whatever it is you're seeing a little bit better than some of the others that feel a little more closed off. All right, so now we're on some very hilly, windy back roads here, and it is really impressive just how well the Crosstrek handles. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat is just, it's such a smooth smooth ride. It is impressive. You know, it's obviously on Subaru's new global platform, which they upgraded to a few years back whenever this was an all-new generation of the Crosstrek. But here for the refresh, they did also retune the coil springs and dampers, so it now has an improved ride than what it had even on the you know, pre-refresh versions of the Crosstrek. And so it's just a buttery smooth ride. And with subcompact crossovers, most of them, you know, you have a decently good ride, but this is definitely a good bit better than most of them, I think. It is really impressive just how soft and smooth the ride is. Also, it's really quiet, you know, you don't really hear any wind noise whatsoever. The only kind of noise I'm really hearing is a little bit of tire noise. That's it. Otherwise, it's really nice and quiet in here. I think this feels a lot like the Mazda CX-30, which is also extremely smooth and quiet. I'd say this is probably right up there with the Mazda as being really refined, and actually feels a little bit more expensive than you might expect considering its price tag. Now, handling is also really good. So they actually retuned steering response as well, and it all is very responsive. You know, whenever you are kind of doing like a slalom maneuver, you know, you feel a little bit of a lean to it. Obviously, you have lots of ground clearance here in the Crosstrek and stuff, and so that's just something, you know, that you're going to have a little bit of. And they also do that, I'm sure, because they wanted to keep the ride, you know, pretty soft and comfortable. But it really is impressive just how it still feels very sporty, very eager and agile, especially on those corners I was on earlier. I mean, it was some really intense cornering, and it just loves it. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Picks up pretty nicely, much improved over the previous, you know, 2.0 version of the Crosstrek. If you go for this Sport or this Limited, you get this 2.5 liter Boxer 4 engine, still naturally aspirated, direct injected. It does 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque, and so it does drop the 0 to 60 time by a good bit. So it's now an 8.2 second 0 to 60 time officially as far as Subaru's quoting goes, but they also quoted officially that the 2.0 version was like a 9.7 second 0 to 60, and even a lot of the testing that like Car and Driver did, for example, they were managing to get a 9.2 second 0 to 60 in the 2.0 Crosstrek. So Subaru's a little bit more conservative with their estimates. I think they said they include like 2 people and a dog whenever they do a 0 to 60 as far as how they rate the time. And so, you know, I would say this is probably in the high 7-second range, and it feels about that quick. Obviously, the CVT kind of distorts your sense of speed a little bit because it just kind of goes to red line or close to it and kind of holds it there, and there's not too many shift points. You know, it just immediately just kind of throws up the RPMs there whenever it senses you want more power. But it is all very responsive, by the way. It's, you know, throttle response is pretty good once you get through the layer of CVT. So, you know, you put your foot down, CVT, you know, raises the engine speed a bunch, and then you start going forward. So it's a little less direct than something with a normal automatic still, but the CVT is how Subaru gets such good fuel economy out of the Crosstrek. It's one of the best in the segment as far as fuel economy for all-wheel drive subcompact crossovers, and so that's kind of one of the prices you pay for that good fuel economy is the CVT. Now, it's not too bad. There also is a manual mode. We can try that out here. It says I'm currently in the 8th simulated gear. We'll go to some lower gears here. There we go. Now it's starting to change the revs a little bit. All right, and so, yeah, it's not super precise even with the downshifts. We'll try. So we'll kind of hold those gears. And the upshifts are pretty quick. And I've tested this CVT and other Subarus in the past. Now, it is beefed up here, by the way, for the 2.5 liter version. So I'm guessing it's, you know, the same kind of torque converter and stuff you get in other 2.5 Subarus, but it is beefed up here, of course, so that it handles the extra power and all that kind of stuff just fine. And you know, the CVT is very smooth, and whenever you know, aren't trying to drive in a sporting manner, it's going to, you know, just work very nicely in the background. Getting back to the power of the Crosstrek, though, I am pretty impressed with just how punchy it is. You know, obviously it's not going to feel as punchy as some of the turbocharged competitors in this segment. You know, stuff like, I think the Hyundai Kona, Kia Seltos with their turbo engines and their higher trims, I think those feel a little punchier just because, one, you have a normal automatic, so you have the, you know, punchier gearing and all that kind of stuff, and then you also have just a little bit more low-end punch in those because of the turbo. This being naturally aspirated, you know, it still feels pretty punchy. I I would say that it feels pretty close to the Mazda CX-30, which has very similar power numbers, although that has a little bit more torque than this does. But whenever the CVT's, playing along with you, it picks up nicely. I'm pleasantly surprised. I was not expecting it to feel, honestly, as quick as it does. And so, yeah, it feels really great to have the 2.5 here in the Crosstrek. The throttle response here, though, is great in the Crosstrek. It still feels very eager to jump into action, and the brakes also are very eager to slow you down. And it's, it doesn't have too much travel to the brake pedal. It kind of starts to bite right at the top of the pedal, but it's a very progressive pedal too, so it's very easy to be smooth with your braking, which is something I struggled with a little bit in the Kia Seltos and one or two of the others, and so I do really like that about this. One thing that I'm not in love with, though, is Subaru's EyeSight system, which is standard in all CVT equipped Crosstreks. And by the way, you can only get this 2.5 liter engine in CVT versions of the Crosstrek, and so you have to have the EyeSight if you want this bigger engine. And so the EyeSight system, it still continues to go off and on, like whenever it loses track of the road lines. I mean, you literally watched it do it twice here, just in my 2 sentences here I've been trying to say. It really just is constantly dinging at you, and I'm not even trying to do this. It's just dinging at me because it's losing track of the road lines. And as you can see, there is no outside road line, but you have very clearly painted lines there going down the middle, and it still struggles to keep track of those lines. And so I've noticed this with other, I already had a Legacy for a week, which had EyeSight, and an Outback XT for a week, which also had the EyeSight, and it really likes to ding at you a lot. It also isn't afraid to nudge at the steering wheel if it thinks that you're not perfectly centered in your lane. It will, be constantly nudging. And so if you appreciate the help, if that's something you think you would enjoy, is having someone kind of helping you and guiding you a little bit, then you might like this. If you like driving yourself, you're going to want to turn that off. Thankfully, there's a handy button right on the steering wheel here to turn off that steering assist if you'd like to turn it off. And that is great, because that means you can, turn it on the highway if you do want to have, some assistance with your long highway drives and things like that. But then on back roads and stuff, if you don't need that or you don't want that, you can just turn it off. So it's very easy. You have a nice little toggle here right on the steering wheel. And now we're on a rougher, somewhat gravel road here. And it still is impressive on even stuff like this, driving over rocks essentially, just how smooth the ride still is here. You do have a little bit more ground clearance than you get with a lot of the other subcompact crossovers, and so that's another nice thing here. If you do plan to take your Crosstrek off the beaten path, even just a little bit, just know you have extra peace of mind here, of course, with the Subaru famous all-wheel drive system, which now has dual mode X mode this year. There's the dirt and snow mode, and then there's the deep snow and mud mode. It does allow you to change the X mode at some very low speeds, but I think if you're above like 15 or 20 miles an hour, it won't let you change it anymore. But so, it is nice that it has actually, whenever you go into the deep snow and mud mode, it'll actually turn off the traction control, so it'll allow you to get that wheel spin you need sometimes to get out of some of that deeper stuff. And so it's cool that you have that just with a little push of that button. You do also have a dedicated traction control off button down here by your left knee. Actually, we will try out, there's a little bit of a hill here. I came to a stop. Going up, no problem whatsoever. Having a true mechanical four-wheel drive system really helps as well, because a lot of the others, it's just a part-time all-wheel drive system, or it's something like in the GM vehicles, you actually have to hit a switch to turn on the all-wheel drive and stuff. This, it's all-time all-wheel drive. It's intelligently always, finding the traction it needs, and it's really great because it means you can just cruise around and enjoy your surroundings and let the vehicle figure out the rest. I think one of the things that really helps the Crosstrek to feel agile is it's pretty low curb weight. So even with a 2.5 liter engine, it's only gained about 40 or so pounds, and so the curb weight here for a sport trim is about 3,265 pounds. So pretty light, and I really like the small dimensions here of the Crosstrek. It really helps this vehicle just to feel really sharp. And now we're just cruising on the highway in the Crosstrek. And one thing, you do get a little bit more road noise up here at higher speeds, of course, but I still think compared with all the competitors, this is at least as good, if not a little bit better than most of those. So that's really great. And so the other thing, though, like I said, for 2021, you have enhanced adaptive cruise control that they have, and so it does do the lane centering and all that kind of stuff. So we'll go ahead and put that on here and see how that works. And now I did just take it around a few tighter corners, and it does a really good job. So it isn't afraid to really get in there and do the steering for you. Obviously, again, your hands have to be fully on the wheel, but it does do a good job of still, you know, going around those corners, giving you the steering that you need so that you stay in the lane no matter what. And that's an improvement over some of the other systems like Toyota's system, which is very passive, does not keep you in your lane very well. Hyundai's system can be hit or miss depending on the model. And, you know, really, I think Honda's system is very similar to this and feels just as good. But I think this is towards the top of the pack as far as adaptive cruise control systems go. So that's bundled with, you know, the EyeSight system that you get in every CVT Crosstrek here for 2021. And then, you know, also with the EyeSight, you get the automatic emergency braking, the lane departure warning, which, by the way, you can turn off the lane departure warning and then it will illuminate that orange symbol there on the gauge cluster. But if you at least, you know, want to just turn off the steering assist whenever you're not on the highway, if you're on a back road or something, at least you can turn that off and you're not going to be having it constantly nudge at the wheel. And yeah, it's a really nice highway cruiser, of course, just more of that smooth ride goodness here in the Crosstrek. Also, the fuel economy here in the 2.5 version of the Crosstrek is actually only a tiny bit worse than the 2.0 version. You actually get one better MPG on the highway, and it's only one less for the city and combined rating. So it does 27 in the city, 34 on the highway, and 29 combined. And so, you know, for basically only losing one in the city and gaining one on the highway, I think it actually makes a lot of sense. If you can afford to jump up the 2.5 liter, I think you totally should. Now, I've been driving this vehicle for about 75 miles here on this press drive today, and that included those dirt roads and some of the low speed stuff. Also a little bit of highway driving, but not a lot at all. And, you know, also a decent amount of idling to film this interior, so that really brought the average down. I believe before the idling, I was doing about 33 MPG in my own experience here, and then now it's sitting at 31.2. So even at 31.2, that is pretty solid fuel economy. You know, I mean, obviously stop and go and stuff would bring that down a good bit, but now I'm just kind of impressed that I'm easily getting over 30 MPG here. But the last thing to mention here about the Crosstrek is its pricing. Now, you know, Crosstreks with the 2.0, they're basically the same as far as pricing goes here for 2021. But for the 2.5 version, you do pay a couple grand more over a premium trim to get into this sport with the bigger engine. But obviously, like I said, you get a bunch of other upgrades like these StarTech seats, you get the push-button start, you know, and several other things that, like I said, the bigger screen here in the gauges, all those types of things. And so, you know, it isn't just the engine you're paying for, you're also paying for all of those other improvements. And so, you know, this one, as tested, the sport trim is going to be starting around $27,500, including destination. And then if you want to go up to a limited version, which gives you the LED headlamps and stuff, that's going to be about $29,000 or so. You know, there's a little bit of a price jump there for that, but you know, I think the pricing is very competitive, and now the engine, the power is very competitive with all the other vehicles out there in this segment as well. Now, I still think the Mazda CX-30 is the best value in this segment, as long as you don't need a ton of back seat space, because like I said, it's a little bit tighter in the back seat of the CX-30. If back seats aren't a priority for you, then I think the CX-30 gives you a tiny bit more power, a way more luxurious interior, better sound system. You get standard LED headlights in the CX-30 as well. And so if you're okay giving up heated seats, you can actually get a CX-30, which also has, you know, its 186 horsepower engine, 2.5 liter as well. You can get that, you know, for like $25,000 and undercut this a good bit. But if you want the heated seats, Mazda reserves that for higher trims, and so you end up having to spend about this money anyway, about $27,500 or so if you want that. But that also gives you leatherette seats and stuff, very similar to the StarTech and everything. But I just think the Mazda interior is much more luxurious. I mean, all the knobs are made out of metal and everything feels expensive in that, versus everything in here still feels, you know, appropriate for its price point. But the Mazda just, you know, knocks out of the park. It is way nicer than its price point suggests. And so I still think the Mazda is my favorite. But as far as, you know, having the rugged capabilities here of the Crosstrek, you know, it's got a little bit of a more customizable all-wheel drive system, you know, with the different off-road modes, the better ground clearance over the CX-30. So you have all those types of things. But another nice thing, though, is you do get a regular automatic transmission in the CX-30 versus, again, the CVT, which I'm not crazy about in this. A couple of other competitors that I really like in this segment are the Hyundai Kona and the Kia Seltos, which both give you actually about 20 more pound-feet of torque than what you get here in this with their turbocharged 4-cylinder engines and their higher trims. And those also give you a lot of value for the money. For $29,000, you'll get a bigger 10-inch screen than what you get here, and even the limited versions. And so if you're shopping in those top trims, that's really where the Hyundai and the Kia have a little bit of an advantage. Whenever you get to the lower trims, though, like for example the base S Turbo version of the Seltos that I reviewed, that didn't have the keyless access, and so I still had to pull my key out of my pocket every time with that. And so they reserve that feature, unfortunately, for their highest trim, versus in this, you can spend that same amount of money, $27.5, and still get that keyless access, the push button start and stuff, which is a really nice feature. So it really just comes down to which features you prioritize the most, and do you need a huge back seat or not. If you do, I think this is still going to be the best pick by far. Overall, I think this is definitely one of the top picks in this segment. I think it's among my handful of favorites in the subcompact crossover segment. There are tons these days, but I think this one is certainly towards the top. I'm really happy that Subaru listened to their customers and just decided that they could just put this engine in. It fit, and so overall it just makes the Crosstrek even better than it was before. And then you add in this smoother ride, the better handling here for 2021, all those nice little improvements, and it just took the Crosstrek up even just a little bit more. It was already fantastic, and now it's even better, especially for those who are on the enthusiastic side and like having that little bit of extra power. You now have it, and it's great. Now, obviously, on my personal wish list, I would love to see a Crosstrek XT someday with the turbocharged engine you get in the Legacy and the Outback. We'll see if that ever happens, but at least there is now a more powerful engine, and it's awesome that Subaru is giving people that option with these sport and limited trims having that engine. It's really great. And yeah, the CVT isn't my favorite. That's really the only complaint with the driving experience. Other than that, though, I really like it a lot. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the 2021 Crosstrek in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. Huge thanks to Subaru for providing me here with the Crosstrek to review for you guys. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.